Can you hear that? Can you hear that? I hope you can hear that because this episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is proudly being powered by two different games and two different companies today. This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is being powered by OOMM Games, who will be relaunching No Escape either the 30th of August or the 4th of September. As soon as we have word, we will let you know, but definitely check out No Escape, which is relaunching onto the Kickstarters. It's a 2 to 8 player game, 13 plus, 30 to 60 minutes, and it is a maze building take that game for 2 to 8 players. The Unfiltered gamer says a never-ending hallway of disaster is waiting for you, and he really likes this game, as well as Just Got Played says it takes the mechanics that usually people frown upon and uses them synergistically and creates a beautiful, simple design. So definitely be watching out for that coming to Kickstarter near you the 30th of August or the 4th of September. And why the signal is so stinking strong today is because this episode is also proudly being powered by Colossal Games, who you probably know has Terrors of London, a Victorian horror-themed competitive deck builder, currently on Kickstarter for a couple more days, 5 to be exact. They were going for $12,000. They're currently over $75,000, and there's still 5 days to jump on this fun game. Most recently, I Am a Social Gamer was caught previewing or playing this game on Instagram even before it has been delivered to backers, even before it has fully funded and wrapped up its Kickstarter tour. So you can look for that. But otherwise, jump over to the Kickstarter page and, like I said, check out Terrors of London from Colossal Games. Now, let's go ahead and get on with this powerfully powered by OOMM Games and No Escape and Colossal Games Terrors of London episode before it's too late.
Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf, the podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
What is this place? What is it doing here in the Leafs computer? Oh, it's Kickstarter Corner with the Leafs.
'Tis that time again, Kickstarter Corner with the Leafs, like she sang. Yes, sirree, Bob. First off, we've got Necrotopia, Handbook to the Apocalypse. Necrotopia is a pen and paper role-playing game. They're releasing a complete 30-page color rule set book with original artwork. Definitely check out this project. We had the creator Keenan on the show a while back ago, and there's still 11 days for you to jump on this fun, going through the 26th of August. Ever see Field of Dreams? I love that movie. If you've seen it, or even if you haven't, you probably know it's all about baseball. Well, All-Star Lineup Baseball, a fast-paced tabletop baseball game, is on Kickstarter currently. In All-Star Lineup Baseball, you go head-to-head or solo baseball action on your tabletop. They've reached their goal, and there's still 16 more days to get on this great project as it ends the 31st of August. So definitely check out Craig's All-Star Lineup Baseball. Next, Dark Naga. Well, actually, yeah, If you want to find out a little bit more about Dark Naga and the OSR Haunting of Hastur modules, make sure you stay tuned until after Kickstarter Corner, as we will be sitting down with Kevin Watson from Dark Naga Adventures to tell you all about it in this great episode of Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf. Next is Survival of the Dummies. You heard that right. Can you pat your head, rub your belly, and name all the planets in our solar system with time running down? Do you like laughing with others while they try to complete other fun and bizarre tasks while doing trivia? Then definitely check out Survival of the Dummies, a party game for underachievers. In this trivia-based party game, teams take turns answering questions while being distracted by ridiculous or frustrating instructions. Back the full game on Kickstarter, or try before you pledge with a free print-at-home demo. Visit survivalofthedummies.com. And we'll leave all the links in the show notes just like usual. You can check it out on Kickstarter. But like we said, try it out before you back it. This game is on Kickstarter through the 8th of September. So they have about a little bit more than 3 weeks to go. So definitely check out Survival of the Dummies on Kickstarter currently. Next, this one just barely launched yesterday. That's correct, yesterday. Battle Bosses. Battle Bosses is a multiplayer miniature battle arena game for 2 to 6 players, where each player controls an epic boss and their minions. We had Alex on the show a couple weeks back. You can go back and listen to that. I believe it is a pinned episode in our Facebook page, depending on when you're listening to this. And did you know that this great game has some awesome miniatures? It looks like there's some cool miniatures, a robot, a flying ship, just some awesome miniatures. I would scroll through the page and see what Alex Kess of Kess.co is bringing to you in Battle Bosses, going through the 14th of September on the Kickstarters. Alfred Woofy, a renowned horse race jockey in the old world. It's said that he won some great races, and you can still see that pride on his face. Alfred is the kind of guy you don't want to mess with. People around me were dropping like flies, and those that weren't dead were on their last legs. Somehow I survived, and those stupid enough to double time me got waxed before they could say hallelujah. That's the way it is. I'm not in the business of changing the world. Alfred Woofy. Did that sound familiar to you guys? It didn't to me neither, but this is one of the Who's on Moonshiners of the Apocalypse, which is running down on Kickstarter currently. They have well surpassed their goal of 25,000. Currently, at the time of this recording, they're at 115,000, and they're still 8 days to go as this ends next Thursday, the 8th of August. No, not the 8th of August. Next Thursday, the 23rd of August. So definitely check out Moonshiners of the Apocalypse by Too Fat to Fly Games. Is Confluence Cosmic Mirror Games core rulebook. There's 10 worlds, 1 game, endless possibilities. Confluence is a core rulebook for the Cosmic Mirror Games settings and systems. There's still 2 weeks to jump on this little fella. They're about a fifth of the way funded. Let's go ahead and make Confluence Cosmic Mirror Games core rulebook a reality, just like we did with their other games and other rulebooks. So definitely check that out, especially if you like role playing. And the art is awesome. You can actually go ahead and link to a playtest copy and check it out yourselves before you back it. And do you like role-playing games? Well, one of the friends of the show, Matthew Bogdan, is at it again in Create Your Own Fantasy RPG Adventure RPG Resources Book. Contributing authors James Ward, Leonard Lakofka, hopefully I didn't slaughter that, and more, share some of their pro tips on how to create your first fantasy RPG. Definitely check this one out, as it just barely launched yesterday, from Matthew Bogdan, Dark by Design. And this one goes for another 30 days. They're over halfway to their goal at the time of this recording. So definitely check out Create Your Own Fantasy RPG Adventure RPG Resources book. Now shall we get on to hear what our friend over at Dark Naga has to say about Dark Naga OSR Haunting of Hastur modules? We sure shall. We join this interview already in progress.
Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
Small town of Bolden and its surrounding villages are afraid. Dozens of people are missing, some speculate lost to some nefarious purpose. Tales of an evil temple and the horrible things within circulate. The few who know the legends and the history of their region are beginning to think the dark times have returned. Times not seen since the fall of the first age of man. People are beginning to feel the icy fingers of fear closing in. Upon arrival, the party members encounter a broken man, a homeless drunkard prone to incessant rambling. This inspires an investigation into the stories of the lost temple. Has it been rediscovered by men seduced by its forgotten evil? Drunkard's tale leads to others who might help the party discover more before they face the lost temple of forgotten evil.
Did that sound familiar to you guys? It didn't to me neither, but this is a story of the Lost Temple of Forgotten Evil, a 5e OSR adventure, and tonight we're lucky enough to have on the creator mastermind behind this adventure, as he has more of a compilation on Kickstarter, Dark Naga OSR Haunting of Hastur modules all in one. Is that correct, Kevin? Is that how you fall in line with it?
That's the correct. This is the OSR version of the 5e series that I published one at a time. The OSR rules, as opposed to the 5e rules, all of them as a bundle are available for the OSR audience to get their copy in print.
Okay, awesome. Before we get into that, one important question. My wife said I might be pronouncing it wrong, but how do you say, is it Dark Naga or Naga?
Naga. That's how I pronounce it, at least.
Okay, Dark Naga. Okay, awesome. And before we dive into that, let's rewind a little bit if we could. We don't have to go back too terribly far, of course, unless you were born into tabletop board gamings. But how did you get started into playing role-playing games and whatnot?
It actually began fall of '80 at a scouting event. We were locked into the church overnight, and we played a really badly run AD&D adventure. The experience wasn't great, but the idea intrigued us. And two of my scouting friends and one of our non-scouting friends, over Christmas, we literally rotated between the four houses over the entire Christmas break, except for Christmas Eve, the 25th and the 26th. It was family time. And one of my friends got a copy of the box set for Christmas from his mom, and we tried running it ourselves. We didn't do a great job, but we had more fun that way than with that badly run game with our scouting friends. And then later on in '81, my parents got me the Moldvay box set. And at that point, I became the dungeon master for our group, and I've been behind the table for 32 years now, behind the screen for like 32 years now.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So did you have to win the module or the adventure to be able to get out of the church that first night?
No, it was the church. It was a physical lock-in. It was a scouting event. It was, and we were done with our service project, but we couldn't leave the church. So we played a D&D game from about 10 to about 3 in the morning, and then we slept a little bit, and then Sunday we did a little bit of cleanup before church service started, and then we all went home. It was a Webelow style project. We repaired some damaged pews, mostly just sanded down some burrs, and did some cleaning, and took some stuff to the dumpster. Just kind of helped with them with some heavy lifting. It was a Presbyterian church, not too far from where I live now, actually. And they just needed the scouts to do a little service project to help them with some difficulties that they couldn't manage on their own. So, we did our good deed, and they were our sponsor, so we did whatever they asked us to do, of course.
Well, there you go. And then a badly run D&D session. What does that mean, badly run?
They made up a bunch of rules that didn't make any sense, and it really didn't make it a collaborative event. It was more of a competitive event, just because they didn't understand what they were actually doing. We were only 10 years old, and nobody runs a good game at 10 years old. But this one was it was very player against player and very antagonistic, and not a cooperative story, which is what role-playing games is about, is cooperative storytelling with elements of randomness, so you can't just make these epic, impossible stories of always winning, because if you didn't have adversity, you wouldn't have a good story. And if most people can't tell a good story without somebody putting in adversity for them to help them make the story good. If you were to play a video game in God mode, and it's boring because you always win, nobody can hurt you, it's a boring game. When you're at risk of losing a life, dying, losing the game, game having to be restarted, the game is much more engaging.
Yeah, it's like my Tetris. When I'm playing Tetris and I get past 150,000, it just goes crazy fast.
Right, and at that point you're engaged, and it's really, really difficult. Easy mode just is boring unless you just want to see the content. The easy mode is just lazy, and so for me, the random elements and the fact that as the dungeon master, I'm the entire world. The players each have one that they represent one person. I'm the rest of the entire world, and while elements of it I'm working against them, as a person I'm not working against anybody. I'm just filling in the rest of the world for this collaborative story we're telling about epic heroes. But, some of the roles that I play are highly adversarial, but it never is person versus person adversarial the way that games are supposed to be run. The way these guys ran it was very adversarial, player against player, DM against all players, and it wasn't a fun time. The potential was there, and we saw that, but we recognized that the way those guys were playing just wasn't the way we wanted to have fun.
Well, that's awesome that you're able to figure that out so early on. And then over 30 some odd years, I imagine you're playing as transformed somewhat.
It's transformed more times than I've got fingers and toes.
Oh boy, so quite a bit.
It transforms regularly.
So at the current time, besides Dark Naga adventures and whatnot, because if I let you pick your own game, I don't know what my fans would say. Besides that, at the current time, what's your favorite role-playing game, would you say, Kevin?
To be honest, I'm really looking forward to the rebirth of Alternity. It's a space opera sci-fi game. TSR put it out just before they sold to WotC. It's not D&D. It uses a very different dice mechanic, rule mechanic, and Sasquatch Studios, which has some people who worked on the original Alternity, acquired the rights, and they did a Kickstarter about 7-8 months ago, and their product is ready to hit the market, and I'm really looking forward to what they've done with space opera style science fiction gaming.
Oh, wow, awesome. So do you prefer to play in a science fiction world or just ebbs and flows?
I like to play in almost all worlds. I like modern games, post-apocalyptic, or space opera sci-fi, hard sci-fi, fantasy. And within fantasy, you've got low magic, or high fantasy, and then some mix in between. And the mix in between is where I have the most fun. I really don't like the super high magic world, where you get kind of a Harry Potter-esque. Everyone uses magic to do everything throughout their day. No one needs to go get their glasses fixed because you just cast a quick spell and boom, your glass fixed. That's a high magic world. That's just too much. The low magic worlds can be fun. Game of Thrones is a very, very low magic world, especially the first couple of seasons when there's no living dragons. As you get in the later seasons and the dragons get to be full adult, it's becoming more of a low to medium magic world, and who knows what the last season is going to have for us. That's where it gets more fun because you got to fight for magic. Magic is special. Magic's not entirely trusted. So if you're in the middle of the street and you zap somebody with a magic missile, you might have a mob freaked out by that who surrounds you, and call you a witch and call you in league with the devil and not trust you, maybe even run you out of town. So you have to be real careful with what you do and don't reveal in these low magic, more challenging worlds.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's cool. So I imagine in Dark Naga that it's a low magic world. Is that right?
It's a medium. It's a low medium, but medium. The world I've created, it's if you take low is 1 and high is 10, it's like a 3.5. Not a lot of magic items. Caches are relatively rare, and they're feared and revered. The demi-humans are really pulled away from the human world, so it's a very human-centric, very mundane, medieval-looking world. At the beginning of the 5-part series, and toward the end, it begins to start shifting toward a more traditional world, because this is a world right on the cusp of their Renaissance. The knowledge of the lost age of man is about to be reintroduced. And in the third module of the series, the party members are the ones who actually negotiate to get that knowledge returned to the lands of man. And at that point, you get this huge surge of new knowledge, and basically a magic fantasy role-playing game version of our Renaissance happens on this planet. And things start changing very, very rapidly. And the quality of living moves up for everybody. And you get something very similar to what happened on our planet in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, as we went from out of what we commonly call the Dark Ages through pre-industrial world, where we were circumnavigating the globe, we were curing disease, and we were just inventing things and changing the world very rapidly.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's awesome. And perhaps people who have listened to the podcast for a while have heard a little bit about Dark Naga here and there. For say somebody, this is the first time they're listening, what can you tell us about Dark Naga? I guess it's this world you talk of or whatnot. What's different? There's 5 adventures, is that right?
I've written 5 so far. This series is complete at 5, and it's set in a world. It's called Tulmser. It's just a random word I made up. Dark Naga is actually my company, and I write adventures as a third-party publisher for Dungeons and Dragons, both the old classic editions called the OSR and the new 5th edition. The world is Tulmser that I've created, and it's very, very realistic. I don't have a lot of things that don't make geological or physical sense. There's not a lot of breaking of the laws of physics as we know them, the laws of geology. It's a very realistic world, and it's really modeled after what's happened with human civilization on Earth. I don't have the Romans, but I have the first age of man, and they fell. My dark ages were really dark. Human dark ages weren't as dark as we think they were. Mine were. Civilization just pretty much ceased to exist. Man became little more than a hunter-gatherer, and sometimes became a savage for about 2,000 years. And then the whole idea of let's do better, let's try to have something that lasts beyond one generation started taking hold again. And now you're about 100 years into an enduring civilization returning to the world of man. So it's a more dramatic version of our own Earth history, but it's based on real history with those real conflicts and those real foilables that human beings have always had and probably always will have.
Awesome. And you talk of OSR, so is that the old school D&D, or what is OSR exactly?
OSR is a catch-all term for the old school rules, old school revival, old school Renaissance. It depends on which flavor, which faction within the community you're in. I treat it as an all-inclusive. It's the older style of play. It happens to coincide with when TSR was sold to Wizards of the Coast in 1997. But it includes the basic edition, first and second versions of AD&D, the retro clones that have come out in the last 10, 15 years, including Castles and Crusades, Sword and Wizardry, Labyrinth Lord. So modern games that you have modern elements that try to reproduce that original older style of play. And it's very different from the style of play that's become dominant in the last 15 years within the hobby.
Awesome. So, in changing from a 5th edition to OSR, did you have to do a lot of play testing or a lot of changing to make it fit for the OSR?
Mostly had to remove 5th edition specific things like skills and like certain types of mechanics. There's a few mechanics that are new that are in 5th that aren't in the OSR version. So stripping those out or putting an equivalent mechanic in. There aren't skills in the older version, so removing all the skill elements and replace them with an equivalent. And then the monster statistics are very different because there's a power scale difference. Somewhere along the way, probably mid to late 90s, second edition AD&D started this power creep where the players got more and more powerful with every book that was released. That continued through all the phases of 3 and 4. 5 reset that, but didn't reset it all the way back to what it was in 1981. So monsters are about 75% more powerful. Players are about 75% more powerful. So correcting that, and it's just a numbers game. I mean, if I'm hitting you for 20 points of damage and you've got 200 hit points, you can take 10 hits. I'm hitting you for 2 points of damage, you've got 20 hit points, you still can only take 10 hits. So it's literally just an inflation numbers game. But making sure that those numbers are appropriate for that rule system is the biggest challenge. And that's the last little bit I have to do for editing for this Kickstarter, is to finish up the statistics for the creatures that the party encounters when they're playing that first adventure. The other 4 are all done. That first one I'm having to do a little more tweaking to get it right.
Oh, okay, awesome. So, what's the inspiration behind going to OSR on this as well?
Well, it's a very vibrant community. It's a style of play that I prefer. It's referred to as sandbox play, where basically you have a space, and within the adventure, that space is defined pretty well, and there's events that are going to happen, and the players can choose to interact or not interact with any of those specific elements, and they can attack these issues in any order. Modern play is extremely linear. You deal with problem A, and then B, and then C, and then D, and then you have the final battle, and it's very railroady. You're stuck on the rails, and you have to go through it. With sandbox play, you might do A then F. You might skip B completely. That might have consequences for you, and it might not, depending upon how important B is and what else goes on. So the adventures that I write for 5th edition are really 1980s style adventures. I just use the 5th edition rules. So converting that style of play to another rule set is really easy because it's the style of play these guys have been playing for 30 plus years. And they really enjoy not being told you will do this and then that. The nickname for it is Combat, Skill Challenge, Combat, Adventure Over. And that formula, which is, you can map that formula to almost every adventure published in the last 15 years. It gets boring and tired. And people just get sick of it. So I'm trying to provide at least one source of alternatives to that style of play that I think is kind of boring and tired. Some guys love it, some women love it, and more power to them. But there are people who are all over the world that are sick of that format, and I'm trying to tap into that audience and provide an alternative. I also don't have combat-focused adventures. My adventures can be played with exploration and role-playing and very little combat, if that's what the party chooses to do. They also can be played as 100% combat. That's probably the most boring way to play the game. You might as well play a video game if all you want to do is kill stuff all day long. World of Warcraft is great for that. If you want to just kill things and loot all day long, Warcraft's your game. But if you want to interact with other people, NPCs, and each other, and go well beyond a programmed set of rules, tabletop's the only place you can do that, because computers are not yet smart enough to be able to adjust to you and give you a true open world where you can go wherever you want. As great as the Fallout games are, and they are very open world, and they are sandboxy to a great deal, they still are written with a fixed piece of code, and they can only do what somebody programmed them to do. Whereas a human being, if you decide to take an alternate path, you can sit there, think for a minute, and remap the adventure, and all of a sudden you're right back playing. Whereas with the computer, I mean, I was playing a computer game when I was in the military. It was the Traveler computer game. It glitched and put me at the very end of the game and gave me the code to get the free T-shirt within 10 minutes of playing the game, because it had a glitch in the code and it jumped straight to the end of the game. Wow, that's boring.
Yeah, it gets kind of boring. I used to listen to a podcast called the Glass Cannon Podcast, and they do Pathfinder adventures, and mostly they were doing the adventures that were set up, but every once in a while they would do a open, sandbox adventure where they go into a city and anything could happen. Like sometimes they would miss what was in a bunch of buildings and whatnot.
And one of the keys to writing a sandbox adventure is you lay out what's going to happen if the party never existed. So imagine, take a movie, take Die Hard. If John McClane hadn't been in that building, they were going to put the explosives on the roof, mess with the FBI, put everybody on the roof, blow up the roof, use the ambulance to get out the back door. So you would itemize, you would list out the sequence of events for their master plan with no interference. So that if the players decide to go off on a tangent for 2 playing sessions, you can move the storyline forward. And then when they jump back into it, maybe it's not exactly the way it was written for the adventure, but with that extra piece of guideline information, you can adapt it. Okay, so they've moved to here. So now I'm going to rearrange the adventure a little bit so that it reflects the fact that you ignored the problem for 4 weeks. And the bad guys kept moving their timeline and their agenda forward. So now, instead of, to use the Die Hard example, instead of, playing with the FBI, they're playing with John McClane. And he's throwing a monkey wrench into their plans. If he were to, have never reared his voice and never interacted, they'd have called the FBI on their own. They'd have, move their plan forward, and then he would have had a more difficult job later on in the movie. It'd have been a very different movie too. But being able to not say, well, no, you have to deal with this guy right now because there's no way to run this adventure unless you deal with the guy right now, it means you're on the tracks of a railroad adventure, and those are just no fun. At least not to me. There are people who love them, and I'm happy for them. It's just not what I want to do, and there are a lot of people out there who are they're just tired of it, and we're looking for an alternative. And they're harder to write. Believe me, a linear adventure is very easy to write. And you have to allow for things to happen in any sequence of events instead of just a fixed sequence. It's a lot harder to plan for, and that's a lot harder to write. But the payoff is incredible because you have a lot more fun. You aren't limited to one particular path because they can, the same party and the same DM could play the adventure at 3 different phases of their lives. They could play it in college in their 20s. They could play it as young parents in their mid-30s and play it again as empty nesters in their late 40s. And it would play 3 different ways because they've all changed so much. They're going to approach those problems in a different way.
So, yeah, that's awesome that you can go in and play it at different stages of life. Remembering back, I don't remember it too well, but my friends, when we were back in high school, it's been over 20 years now, they told me that, we played, what was it called? It was based in Tolkien's world. It was a red book. I can't remember the name of the game right now. But we played a role-playing game.
Probably a Middle-earth role-playing game, MERP.
Yeah, the red book, the middle MERP. Yeah, we played MERP, and they told me, I didn't remember what my character was, but it sounds like we each went back and picked like a item from our day, and were able to use it as our magical item or whatnot. And they told me that I had a rubber chicken that was filled with nitroglycerin, so I thought that was kind of cool.
I remember a player who had a golden sword, and I'm like, you realize a golden sword would not hold an edge, and I don't care, I want a golden sword.
Yeah, so that was fun. Yeah, me and my friends played that quite a bit, so that was awesome. It's been quite some time. I've been talking to them about trying to get back to playing that, but yeah, it's been a while. So that's awesome that you can play it different ways, and it plays differently at different stages of life. So when it comes to the new OSR modules or adventures that you've set up. What do you think you're most proud about?
To be honest, probably Kickstarter performance. I'm not running six-figure projects like some people are doing, but mine all fund and they all deliver on time or early. And at this point, I've got people coming to me and asking me either to coach them on how to run their Kickstarter the same way that I do or similar to how I do, or run it for them so that they don't get themselves in trouble, end up one of the people on the wall of shame. I have a project management background, and I use some of those principles in how I organize things, how I communicate. I use spreadsheets to keep track of where various tasks are. I literally, in every weekly update, I paste a list of the tasks to be done, and they're in three categories: completed, in progress, not started yet. And each week I shuffle those around so that my backers know exactly what has been done, what I'm working on right now, and what hasn't started yet. Usually because there's a linear dependency. Usually the list is not a linear list, but a lot of those tasks are generally until I complete this line 3, line 4 can't start. So they know exactly where we are and what to expect next. And that communication seems to really help people have a high level of trust and not worry about, is this thing going to show up? Is it going to take the money and run? Because I don't think there's anybody who's backed more than 2 projects who hasn't directly seen a project, maybe not one they backed, but seen a project that got off the rails, out in the weeds, and maybe never fulfilled. Maybe it was intentional fraud. Maybe it was just somebody got in over their head and didn't know how to dig themselves out. But there are, according to their Kickstarter's own numbers, something around 15 to 20% never successfully satisfy their pledges. And that's a horribly big number.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but that's awesome.
I've backed almost 300 projects, and I think I'm looking at never delivered, true, never going to deliver, never going to finish, less than 10. So either I've been really lucky or games projects have a better number than projects as a whole. I don't know which one it is. My sample is far too small to think my sample is beyond anything more than a vague predictor. But I've got like 5 that are true flat out frauds, and I've got several where the guy just got it over their head and they just didn't know how to fix the problem. The money got chewed up with mistakes, and now they're broke.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different stories going on with that stuff. So that's great that you've been able to fulfill.
There's more of those than I care to count, and I'm helping fix one of them. Judges Guild, which is one of the first third-party company for D&D. The owner's son, the founder's son, Bob II, has come and asked me to help him right the ship. He's got his son, Bob III, did one that's like 4.5 years late. And I've known Bob for about 6 years now. We meet each other at conventions on a regular basis and pass and say hi and catch up. And he flat out said, if you could help me get this ship righted, I would really appreciate it. And I'm like, okay, let me know what I need to do to help you get that righted. And I'm waiting on him to finish his edits, and he's going to hand the text to me, and I'm going to do the layout for him. I've already set up the format, set up the styles, send him a sample document. I literally need him to draw where he wants the art to go, and finish the edits, and I'll be able to start getting this book out the door.
I bet the backers will be pleased about that.
The fact that he said, he did an update about a month ago, and he flat out said, this guy is still with the project, and we brought this guy on board. And they just said, Kevin Watson of Dark Naga Adventures, and the comments, I've seen his work. He does solid work. He doesn't play games, and he delivers his Kickstarters on time. This is going to be a lot better. I'm really encouraged by this. And I was like, wow, that really made me feel good.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome. Yeah, so Jumping back to Dark Naga OSR Haunting of Hastur modules, per se somebody's fallen asleep, it wouldn't be because of you or your great games. It'd be because of me and my podcast. At the time of recording, we're going into the second or third week of August, and at the time of this recording, we've already released 133 episodes since the first of the year. So sometimes they fall asleep, and now they're suddenly jolted awake, so they don't hit the oncoming traffic, and you have their full attention, Kevin. Why should they take a chance on Dark Naga OSR Haunting of Hastur modules, especially with all the other great, I see different campaigns and modules and different things related to role-playing games on Kickstarter? Why should they take a chance on this one, especially with everything else out there?
3 reasons. They're a lot of fun. They look gorgeous. The art that I've been blessed to be able to hire, the artists to be able to hire, every one of them can convey atmosphere and mood and emotion with a simple drawing. And these are the adventures that you should be playing. The linear combat, skill challenge combat adventures is not where you want to put your energy. You want an adventure that's going to let your party explore different means of interacting with their world and not just simply fight, roll some dice. Oh, we got a 5, we're good, and then call it a night. You want to be able to dig into some moral quandaries. You want to be able to talk to people, negotiate, even with the bad guys, negotiate some kind of resolution and explore those ideas, because those are, when you do that piece, the combat, skill challenge combat, teaches you no social skills, but that interaction, that exploration, that negotiation is where all the benefits of role playing, the sharpening of social skills, the reduction of social awkwardness, getting better at public speaking, all comes from the interaction and exploration parts of the game, not the combat part. And so many adventures focus on combat and ignore the role playing aspects, the exploration and the interaction aspects, and these don't. These let you, there are several of my adventures, you never have to draw a sword. You can play the entire adventure without ever getting into combat. And that's so rare in this world. It deserves a chance to breathe and find the biggest audience possible.
Well, there you have it, and we'll make sure we leave links in the show notes so people can go ahead and click on them, because sometimes they don't necessarily want to type it in. But yeah, definitely at least go ahead and check out Dark Naga OSR Haunting of Hastur modules. We'll make sure we leave links in the show notes or whatnot. Now, I don't know if you've listened to any of our podcasts or not, Kevin, and that's okay if you haven't, but the next portion of the podcast is called Adventures in Application Acquisition, where we talk about an app, be it for your cell phone, a tablet, a computer, even a video game, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be related to role-playing games or whatnot. But is there an app you use a lot of that we can talk about for a moment, Kevin?
My absolute favorite app is, let me get its name real quick, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, you're good.
It's called 5th Edition Character Sheet, and it literally lets you use your tablet or your phone as your character sheet without having to scratch out and rewrite. And it keeps everything in a very organized format, so that when you're at the table, you can find things quickly without having to look through. And people like me, my handwriting is horrible, and reading a character sheet that I wrote is difficult. That's why I learned to use the Adobe tools, because I can make form-fillable sheets and type in all my stats, because my handwriting is just, it's its own encryption format. It's so bad. Doctors can't read my handwriting, and they can read their own just fine. On the phone, the screen's really small. I find it difficult to use on the phone, but on my iPad, it's big and beautiful, and it's really, really easy to use. You can, when you take damage, you can mark it on there. When you heal, it's got the code in there to help you through the heal quickly and do it efficiently. It's great at keeping good clean records, so you don't accidentally put wrong information and kind of cheat yourself out of fun by forgetting to record something you should have recorded. Its only weakness is it doesn't have a good export feature to put it in a conventional paper sheet through the computer yet, but they'll get that eventually. It's like $1. It's a really, really inexpensive tool, and it's one of the best tools I've seen in the history of digital tools for gaming, to be honest.
Well, there you go. We'll make sure if you get us the link, we'll make sure we leave a link in the show notes. And it sounds like you went ahead and answered my next question of if you own the rights, what you would do to make it better. It sounds like you would make it so it can go over to a printable form.
That would be my big thing. Even if it's just it made a PDF that you could just print, couldn't edit or anything, that would be a big, vast improvement. But if you could actually export that data and pump it into a sheet that could be edited down the road, that would be like the holy grail. So if you don't always, I mean, I literally, when I'm making pre-generated characters for tournament play, I use the app and I just create characters at the right level, and then I manually export that data into a paper sheet, because creating characters on that is so easy and so fast, and it's easy for me to create a good, diverse character quickly on that. So I don't have a bunch of clones that are not very well differentiated from each other at the table for those convention players. I get these unique combinations because it makes it really easy to see everything at once and just drill through it.
Well, there you go. We try to make a green podcast around here. So if the creators or anybody who has anything to do with updates of that app is ever listening, you heard it here first on Getting Geeky with Game Relief, what Kevin from Dark Naga Adventures would do to fix it. So there you go. That's awesome. So minus coming there to your hometown to stalk you or find out what you have going on with Dark Naga Adventures, how would people go ahead and keep up with you and what adventures you have going on and whatnot, Kevin?
Best place is split right now evenly between the website, www.darknaga.com, or the Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/darknaga, no spaces. I post both places about equally. One of the things I plan on conquering before 2018 wraps is getting the same message to both platforms, and probably link back to one of those platforms, to Twitter, on a more consistent basis. So you don't have to follow all of them. You can just follow the website, whether you go to the website yourself daily or use an RSS feed to just pull the updates down, or if you just want to use the Facebook page and Facebook's natural new post, unread post feature to keep track of things. You don't have to go to more than one place, because that's a weakness I have right now, is information is not uniformly spread across all the platforms. And I'm going to work on fixing that this year so that I'm more consistent. Because not everybody wants to go to Facebook to get their news. Not everybody wants to go to an RSS reader and get their news. Some people think they're obsolete and have ignored the RSS readers. And going to a web page every day and making sure nothing's changed on it, it's intensive. So if you can pick the one that works for you and get everything you want in one place, and copying content between places is not as difficult as I make it out to be. It's just something that I don't instinctually do, and it's something that I'm going to train myself over the next 5 months to start doing at an instinctual level. It's just literally grab the body and paste it into the blog on the website straight from Facebook, and then they'll both be in the same place, and the RSS feed will pick it up, and then everybody gets what they need.
There you go. We'll make sure we leave links into the show notes so they can go ahead and follow you that way. But yeah, we don't want to keep you all night, but we really appreciate you coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief with us tonight, Kevin, to talk all about Dark Naga OSR Haunting of Hastur modules with us tonight.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time and enjoy being here.
No problem.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.